Oh yeah, we was chosen. Ain't no fear over here, man. Only boldness, and you know this. Oh yeah, we was chosen. Ain't no fear over here, man. Only boldness, and you know this. Boldness, this is courage, this is strength. At its finest, I got no reason to fear. I know that my God is beside me. Courage in me rising every time the current rises. I walk on top of the water, ain't no drowning round here. But the sound of boldness definitely drowns out there. Hey, let's go. I'm thinking it's time that we get bold. I'm thinking it's time that we let the world know. I'm thinking it's time that we realize that we the ones that God has called and commanded to walk in courage. We standing together. When the enemy tries to flood, we raise a standard. Let's go. Oh yeah, we was chosen. Ain't no fear over here, man. Only boldness, and you know this. Oh yeah, we was chosen. Ain't no fear over here, man. Only boldness, and you know this.
Courage. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about what it really means to battle fear and to fight the fears that are within us. Because if we were all really honest, brutally honest tonight, we would all admit that we all struggle with fear. We all struggle with courage at some point in our life. So I just want, you don't have to yell this out loud. You'll get to maybe talk about this in groups in a little bit. But think about, what is your biggest fear? What's your biggest fear? Maybe it's spiders and snakes. Who's in that? Raise your hands. Your biggest fear is spiders and snakes. Who here is still afraid of the dark? Anybody still afraid of the dark? We got a couple people still afraid of the dark. All right, how about heights? That's mine. Heights, I'm scared of heights. So I'll tell you a little bit about one of my fears. So I love roller coasters, but I'm also like terrified of roller coasters at the same time. So I don't know if you know that feeling. How many of you have rode Goliath at Six Flags before? So there's this feeling that I get every time I ride it. Hey y'all, listen up, listen up, listen up. I don't need you to yell every time I ask a question. So listen up. There's this ride called Goliath that if you haven't been to Six Flags, it's like the biggest ride there, and it's like one of the biggest rides in the country, I think. And so super tall, goes super fast, and every time I go to Six Flags, I get excited about riding the Goliath, but every time I get there, I start getting nervous. You know what I mean? Like, you know in your mind, like, I want to ride Goliath, but then once you get there, it's like, oh man, what am I really gonna do this? And then sure enough, this happens every time. I'll get on the ride, and then they'll come in, and then they'll lock you in that little seat, and all it is like this little thing that sits in your lap right here. Like, it's like, I don't even know if this is gonna really keep me in place if something were to happen, but you get on there, and then this is the worst part about any roller coaster, especially Goliath, is that you get locked in, and then you start, right? And then if you're anything like me, you get this automatic feeling like, what did I just do? Like, I could die on this thing right now, and I willingly put myself into this situation, right? And it's pretty terrifying. Another fear I have, because I was afraid of heights when I was really little, I was terrified of the diving board. And so when I was little, y'all are gonna laugh at me. Has anyone ever seen The Sandlot? So you guys know the diving board scene in The Sandlot where he jumps off the diving board and he's afraid, but he does it because he's, trying to get with the lifeguard, right? So like, that's what I would think of as like, the diving board, like that's the kind of experience, because I remember that as a kid. And I remember being a kid, and I would get on the diving board and I'm looking around and I was like, there's no lifeguards. So that situation is not gonna work out for me. And I'd get on the diving board and I would be terrified about jumping off the diving board because I was so afraid of heights when I was a kid, and my palms would get all sweaty, and I would do it just because like people convinced me to do it. I'd be terrified of heights when I was a kid. So I don't know what your greatest fears are, but then you grow up, and some of your fears like go away, but then what you realize is that new fears just develop. New things come into those places, and you might not be afraid of the dark. Maybe some of you apparently still are, but maybe you're not afraid of some of the things that you were afraid of when you were a kid, but new fears have come into that place. And then we certainly have fears mentally, emotionally, spiritually, when it comes to following Jesus, when it comes to living a life of faith. We often will have fears. And here's the thing, is that our greatest fears often keep us from our greatest experiences, right? Like every time I get on Goliath, I'm terrified to do it, and I'm terrified as soon as it takes off, and my palms are sweating, and I'm nervous, and you're going up, it takes so long to get up that first hill, that first climb, but what happens when the ride's over? You want to jump in and do it again, right? Because it's one of the greatest experiences. It's an absolute adrenaline rush. And so that's the thing, is that our greatest fears are often keeping us from our greatest experiences, whatever that is. And one of the biggest rivals of our faith, if you would consider yourself a faithful person in the sense that you've put your faith in Jesus, that you're living a life of faith, one of the biggest rivals to our faith is fear. Because what happens when we start following Jesus is we start asking ourselves all these questions like, well, what will people think of me? Well, what is this going to cost me? What could I possibly lose by following Jesus? What could I possibly lose by letting people know that I'm a Christian? Or just by being a Christian, what is that going to require me to give up? What is that going to cost me? Are other people going to like me as much? What are other people going to think of me? You know, reality, some of you are in this room, you're so afraid to worship. So here's what you do. You like play it off cool, like I'm just cool, and I'm gonna mess with my neighbor. I'm just gonna make jokes, and you know what that is? I believe what that is? Fear. You're afraid to, like, what if you actually dive into this whole Jesus thing and it changes your life? What then, right? Like, what if you actually take Jesus seriously and he's everything is advertised and it radically changes your life? Fear. You see how fear often keeps us from our greatest experiences? And here's the thing that we're gonna unpack tonight, is that God has called you to a courageous life, not a comfortable life. God's called you to a courageous life, not a comfortable life. See, when you look at culture, when you look at other people's lives, what we see from social media and what we see from TV is that we should just pursue a life of comfort. Like the goal is just to work hard, make a lot of money, live the American dream, and retire to the beach someday, right? Like that's just kind of the goal. But maybe the goal isn't to live comfortably. I mean, we certainly want comforts, and comforts aren't necessarily a bad thing. But what if the goal is to actually live a courageous life? And so tonight we're going to talk about this idea that we were called to live a courageous life, not a comfortable life. And we're going to talk about this by looking at a guy by the name of Peter. And we're going to look at the book in the New Testament called Matthew, where we get this story that is written about Jesus and his disciples. And we talk about Jesus and his disciples a lot. And if you've been here before, you can kind of pick up where we're at in the story. Jesus has, he started teaching, he started performing these miracles. He's really gotten this following, this gathering of people that are following after him. And we see this scene where Jesus is really just displaying his power. And what Jesus is having to do is he's having to teach his disciples that he literally is the Son of God. And they can't really comprehend this. They can't really wrap their mind around this. And Jesus has just fed 5,000 people. He's performed all these miracles. And we're going to pick up the story where Jesus has gone out to the sea. He separated himself from the disciples. And this is what Matthew says about the story. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead of him to the other side. So he sends his disciples in a boat, sends them out. They go out by themselves. They're probably like, I don't know why Jesus isn't going with us. We always go for it together, but whatever. Jesus was doing his own thing. So he sends his disciples out. And then it says, after he dismissed them, he went up to the mountainside by himself to pray. One thing we see Jesus do often is he's either with his disciples, he's with people, or he's by himself. And when he's by himself, what he's doing is he's praying, he's being encouraged by God. He's seeking time out with God because he wants to be prepared, he wants to be rested, he wants to be encouraged to live out the purpose that God has put him on earth to live out. And so this is what it says, and as we continue later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, his disciples, catch the story here, walking on the lake. And so Jesus' disciples are out in this boat, they're on this lake, and Jesus starts walking on the water to them. Like, this doesn't happen. This is a miracle. This is insane. I want you to picture this. Like, this is actually literally happening. Jesus is walking on water towards his disciples. So they're out there just chilling, and there's this storm, there's this wind, it's rocking the boat, and then they see off in the distance that Jesus is actually walking towards them, but they don't realize it's Jesus at first, because this is what it says. Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage." Actually, let's go up. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. They said, "It's a ghost." They cried out in fear. They didn't know who this was, and immediately Jesus says to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." Jesus tells them to take hold of courage. It's this idea when you really break it down in the original language that courage was something they literally needed to grab a hold of, that they needed to move towards, and they needed to take courage and put it into their life. And that's kind of easy for Jesus to say, "Hey, don't be afraid." But there's a storm, it's rocking the boat, and then all of a sudden they see Jesus, they don't know it's him, walking on the water towards them. And I think this is really interesting that Jesus tells them, take courage. Like, take hold of courage. And I think what he's telling you tonight, whatever storm you're facing, whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're going through, because some of you are going through really tough stuff, take hold of courage. Take hold of bravery. Don't be so distracted by the storm. Don't be so distracted by the sea. Don't be so distracted by the wind, but take hold of courage. You need to have courage. You don't need to live your life subject to fear. You need to live your life taking courage. And there's a couple reasons that Jesus encouraged them to do it. One is because, and I think one reason he encourages us to do this is because oftentimes our fear is exaggerated. What do I mean by that? Our fears exaggerate. What I mean is what we'll oftentimes do is we'll exaggerate our circumstance into making ourselves more afraid than we ever should be because we've blown things out of proportion. Or maybe what it actually is Jesus saying, take courage, be brave, don't be afraid, because what he knows is that there's actually a solution that is greater than our problem with whatever it is that we're facing. So Jesus steps up towards his disciples. He knows the situation. He knows what's happening with the wind and the waves. He knows what's happening with the storm, and he says, hey, take courage. And then we see one of his disciples, Peter, that he steps up, and this is like typical Peter. Like he tries to be brave, he tries to be tough, and this is what Peter says. Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. So what Peter's saying is, Jesus, he's yelling out at Jesus, if this is you, Jesus, if you're the one walking on the water, then tell me to come to you. Sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for because you just might get that very thing, right? And so what happens, Jesus says in the next verse, come. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. Like maybe we're not picking up what happened. Like Jesus tells Peter to come, and Peter, a human, just like us, a sinner, just like us, a follower of Jesus, a real life person, steps out of the boat and he starts walking on water. Physically, he's walking on water towards Jesus. This is a miracle. This should not be happening. How many of you know you can't walk on water? This is not a possible thing. You may have tried, but it doesn't work out. It doesn't happen. And in this moment, Jesus tells him to come, and Peter is physically, literally walking on water towards Jesus. But fear takes over. This is what it says. When he saw the wind, he was afraid. So what he does is he takes his eyes off of Jesus. He's locked in, walking on water towards Jesus because Jesus has the power to do this. Jesus does the miraculous. Jesus does the impossible. And so Peter starts walking on the water towards Jesus. He's going after Jesus, but he does what we often do when we find ourselves in a storm, when we found ourselves in a certain season that is uncomfortable to us, when we found ourselves in a place of fear. He took his eyes off of Jesus and he started focusing on everything that was around him. He starts focusing on the wind. He starts focusing on the waves, that this is pretty tough and that he could sink and that he could drown. And as soon as he takes his eyes off of Jesus, what happens is he starts to sink. And then he cries out, Lord, save me. Jesus, save me. Jesus, help me. Maybe that's what you're crying right now, whatever you're experiencing. Maybe emotionally, that's where you're at. That like fear has taken hold of you so much that you're saying, Jesus, please take me out of this situation. Save me from this. Help me in my time of need. And so Peter begins to sink and he cries out, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and he called him. And this is what he says to Peter. This is super, super important. You of little faith, why did you doubt? You of little faith, why did you doubt? I want to unpack this idea as we continue. This is really important. It might seem very different. It might seem very opposite of things that you're told. But the thing that should scare me the most are the things that often make me feel the safest. Think about this. The thing that should scare me the most are the things that make me feel the safest. Here's what we mean by that, is that maybe the things that we should actually be afraid of are the things that bring us more comfort than anything in life. Because while Peter had this experience, while Peter had this moment where he had to be tested, Peter was also the only one who stepped out of the boat, right? Like all the other disciples, they're still in the boat. They're watching this happen while Peter's the one who's actually walking on water. Peter's the one who's getting to experience a miracle. Peter's the one who's getting to experience the impossible work that Jesus does when he steps into a story. And so I think what happens for us oftentimes is that we run away from anything that's dangerous, and we run away from anything that could cause us to fear. We run away from anything that would cause us to be afraid, when in reality, maybe that's the very thing that we should be running towards. One of the most dangerous things for a follower of Jesus is to get to a place where you think he has called you to a life of comfort. I want you to think about that. Hey, I want you to listen in. Pay attention. Maybe the most dangerous thing for you to do is to pursue a life of comfort. Because Jesus doesn't call us to what's easy, right? Like when you read the New Testament, what you see is that when Jesus calls people to follow him, he says, hey, leave your family and let someone else worry about that because you're following me. Step out of your boat, leave your career, and follow me. Leave your past behind and follow me. Step out into what's dangerous. Step out into what is missional and leave that life of comfort behind. Leave the life of convenience behind, and you need to step in and pursue something that's completely different. And what happens is what we'll do is we'll pursue what makes us feel safe when I think what Jesus is calling us to is really an opposite idea where he's saying, no, you can't do that. And maybe the thing that should scare each and every one of us tonight are the things that make us feel the safest. Maybe the most dangerous thing, maybe the most threatening thing to your purpose is the thing that makes you feel the most comfortable. So what makes you feel safe? Maybe having lots of money and a really successful career, that makes you feel safe and secure. That's a part of life, I get that, I'm not knocking that. Maybe being popular and being cool is your safety net. Maybe that's what you're pursuing. Like convenience for you is being liked by other people. Convenience for you is having other people approve of you. Maybe the safe thing for you is that you bully other people because it makes you feel better about yourself because you're insecure. Maybe it's that. Maybe not sharing your faith is what's safe for you because when you share your faith, you don't know how people will respond. You don't know what people will think about you. Like there's someone that you should tell them about Jesus. You should tell them about your faith. You should invite them to church. But you don't know what they're going to think of you, so you just hold out. You don't know how they're going to respond. You don't know if they'll still invite you to hang out with them, so we play it safe. What makes you feel safe? I want you to think about that. I want you to write that down or get that in your mind. What makes me feel safe? Because it just might be that thing that keeps me from experiencing God's best. That just might be the thing that keeps me from experiencing all that it is that God wants me to experience. And here's the thing, is that when I see that Jesus is the one that's going with me, that gives me all the encouragement I need. The way I fight my fear is to see that whenever I walk into a dangerous situation or a situation that appears to be unsafe, a situation that might bring me fear, my confidence is that Jesus is the one who's going with me. My confidence is that when I fall, that Jesus is going to reach out his hand and he's going to be the one to pick me up so I can leave a life of comfort behind. I can leave the disciples in the boat if I'm Peter and I can pursue Jesus and I can run after Jesus because I know even if I fall, even if I sink, that he's going to be the one to pick me up. And here's the thing, students, that we have to get to this place tonight, that when we follow Jesus, we have to move away from the pursuit of ourselves and pursue the life that God is calling us. I don't know what that looks like for you. But I think tonight that what Jesus, I just think this is how he calls us to follow him, is that we got to leave some stuff behind. Like we have to leave some comfort. We have to leave some convenience behind. And when we follow Jesus, we have to move away from just pursuing ourselves and pursuing the things that we want and the things that make us feel safe and the things that make us feel comfortable, whether it be more money in our bank account, whether it having more friends on social media, whether that be having more things to do on the weekends because that makes us feel like affirmation in life, whatever it is. We have to move away from what makes us feel comfortable so that we can move towards a place where we're giving Jesus everything that we have. And here's the thing, when he calls us to follow him, the invitation is to deny ourselves. That's what he tells us in the New Testament. When Jesus invites people to follow him, he says, hey, deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. And I wonder how many of us get to the place where we're afraid to pick up our cross, we're afraid to leave ourselves because all we're told is to pursue a life of comfort, pursue a life of safety. Just go after convenience. Go after whatever's safe. Go after makes you feel secure. Go after whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you comfortable. And no, here's the thing tonight, students, that the mission is far too big for that. That we're trying to avoid danger at the sake of ourselves when the invitation from Jesus is to deny yourself and follow after him. He's saying to go after me, run into whatever it is that he is calling us to do. And don't be afraid because he's going to be with us. Maybe the thing we should be afraid of is the thing that's making us feel safe because it's keeping us far away from what God wants us to experience. Maybe you don't follow Jesus and this is maybe your first time in a situation like this. This is like completely different than what culture tells us. But here's what we want you to know, that in the Christian life, running away from danger might be the most dangerous thing you can do. Let that sink in. Maybe in the Christian life, we have to think differently than what culture tells us is right or true. Maybe in the Christian life, running from danger is the most dangerous thing you can do. Why is that the case? Because Jesus hasn't called us to this life of safety. He hasn't called us to this life of comfort. He's just said to go. And so why would we run away from danger when maybe running towards it is a place where he's saying, I'm right there with you, and I'm gonna lead you to make a difference. Like, I don't wanna get to the end of my life and see that I was just scared. Like, I was just too scared of being uncomfortable, or I was too scared of being unsafe, or I was too scared of not having conveniences in life. We have so many conveniences. We have so many things that make life so easy for us. That's probably the problem in the American church, is that things are too easy. Not to get like super deep off into this is a side conversation. You know, there's people meeting like all over the world, like, and they meet like one time, maybe a month for church, like maybe, because if they were to be caught gathering together and worshiping Jesus, that they would literally be arrested and potentially killed. Like, that's happening in other places of the country. You know what God's doing in those places? We're seeing Christianity explode. Why? Because there's Christians, there's followers of Jesus who get that I'm not running away from danger, because that's the most dangerous thing that I could do. You know why that's dangerous? Because you have friends, they're in your school, who need to know that there's a God who loves them. And if you're not gonna go into your school and share Jesus with your school because it's too scary, because it's too tough, because it's unsafe, because it seems a little dangerous, then who's gonna do it? Who's gonna go? We need a generation of students to stand up and say, hey, I'm not gonna let my life be dictated by fear. Like, I'm gonna run into things that maybe scare me, because I know my God is with me, and he's gonna serve me, and he's gonna protect me, and he's gonna be with me all the days of my life. And the moment I start to sink, he's gonna reach out his hand and he's gonna lift me up, because that's who my God is. He doesn't leave me behind. He doesn't break his promises. He's always there. And because I've experienced the love of God, I'm running towards what's dangerous, because I need people to know that there's a God who loves them. I'm not afraid. I'm going. And I want to be super authentic and to let you know that I'm right here with you. Where like every day is this fight to deny myself, stop pursuing convenience, stop pursuing safety, stop pursuing comfort. And I'm gonna have courage today. I'm gonna take hold of courage, and I'm gonna do something different so that I can make a difference, right? Like, that's what we're called to do. And I wonder if we'd get to a point in our life where we ask ourselves, what difference have I made? Because that question might just depend, what is dictating the answer to that might just depend on how willing you are to step out into the unknown and follow Jesus. Imagine not experiencing the power of God through you because we're too afraid, because we're too scared to step out of the boat and to step into the storm. Right? Like, think about the disciples here in the story. Like, we've been talking about Jesus and Peter. Think about the disciples in this story, that they're afraid. And so they stay in the boat. Guess who got to walk on water? Guess who got the confirmation that Jesus would always be there? Guess who got the confidence that Jesus would never fail him? Peter. So sometimes it's just by stepping out. I wonder how this changed Peter's life. I wonder how it changed the disciples. And here's the thing, I want your life, just like Peter's life modeled to the disciples what faith was like, I want your life to model to your generation what it means to follow Jesus. I want your life to model to your generation what it means to live with courage, to not let your life be dictated by fear, but to take hold of courage, to do the hard things, to do tough things, to do things that are scary, because you know that you were created to make a difference, and you're not gonna let this life pass you by and look back on it and say that you didn't give it all you had because you were afraid. This is how the story ends with Jesus and Peter out on the sea. It says, when they climbed into the boat, as soon as they climbed back into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. Hey, sometimes it takes a storm. Sometimes it takes a tough situation. And sometimes it takes stepping out to see that God is who he said he is. And so some of you tonight, you were questioning whether or not God truly is real. You're questioning, does he love you? You're questioning, does he have a plan and a purpose for your life? And maybe what you need to do tonight is you just need to step out onto the water, into the unknown, into the things that might make you afraid, so that you can see that he's always gonna be there. so that you can see that he's always going to love you. Here's the thing, being called to courage requires you to put your faith in Christ, not comfort. So who's my faith in? My faith is in a God who's always going to be there. And he might not call me to safety, but he loves me, and he's going to take care of me. He's always going to be there. Anyone know the Chronicles of Narnia story, the movie? Anyone familiar with that? Has anyone read those books? I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I had a class in college that was on C.S. Lewis, who's the author of the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know if you know this or not. The Chronicles of Narnia are actually, there's like a spiritual story that's at the bottom of that. It was written with some spiritual, ideas and spiritual pictures throughout the story. And I want you guys to hear this. So in the story, you have this main character, or you really have these brothers and sisters that they enter into this world of Narnia, and they're like figuring out like life in Narnia. It's this magical place that they've never experienced. And there's this character named Aslan who is a lion, and he's just this picture of, he's the king of the, just to sum it up, the good guys. He's the king of the good people. And he's like this super intriguing character, super mysterious, but he's like big, and he's like, he looks courageous, like he looks the part, right? And so there's a scene where one of the little girls, they ask these people, is the lion safe? And all throughout the story, what you see is that Aslan is this picture of Jesus. There's this point where Aslan sacrifices his life for the sake of his people, and he comes back, such a picture of Jesus. And the girl asks, maybe what you're asking, is the lion safe? And the person she asks just chuckles and says, is he safe? No. He's not safe, but he's good. And that's who Jesus is. Is he safe? Yeah, he's a safe place. But does he always lead you to safety? Maybe not. Does he call you to what's dangerous? Does he call you to things that are scary? Does he call you to things that are dangerous? Yeah. So he might not always appear safe, but here's what you can know. The lion is good. I just want you to be encouraged with that tonight, that no matter what you're facing, sometimes what God calls us to is to leave this life of comfort behind. And maybe the thing that should scare you tonight are the things that are keeping you from reaching your full potential. The things that have made you comfortable, the conveniences in life that are calling you to play it safe. And so you know how we know he's good? And I'm about to close it up. You know how we know he's good? And you're going to practice in small groups because of the danger that he stepped into for you. You know how you know Jesus is good? Because of the courage that he had when he gave himself up by putting on human flesh and walking around on planet Earth. The courage that he had to give himself up and be arrested and to go to the cross and to die for your sins and to die for my sins. That's how we know that he's good, is because he isn't asking you to do anything that he hasn't already done for you, right? Like he is not inviting you on a journey that he hasn't been to. When he says that you should deny yourself, what he did was he denied himself. He took up his cross by going to the cross on our behalf to bear our sins on the cross so that we could find forgiveness. Is he safe? Maybe not, because he runs into danger, but he runs into danger to show you that he loves you. He runs into danger to show you that he cares. He runs into danger to grab you, to grab a hold of you and to take you back to the Father. And so your confidence tonight is that he might not always lead me to safety, but I'm stepping towards the one that's always taking a step towards me. When I walk out into the water, when I go towards the unknown, the wind's against me, the storm's against me, but my eyes are on Jesus. And when I fail, he's going to lay his hand down and he's going to pick me right back up and he's going to take me to the place of safety because he's good. I want you to know that, students. Some of you, you're young and you're trying to figure out what purpose looks like for you. And for some of you, this is just, it's confusing. And it's like, I really don't know what it really means to live a dangerous life. Some of you, you know the very thing that God's calling you to do, and that's to not play it safe.